We're back. Thanks to Rod Mullins once again for talking NASCAR with us and getting us ready for next week in Sonoma, and there I should say this weekend in Sonoma. And now let's talk some wrestling here. I'm starting to think through a title for these Monday podcasts. I'm going to call these, I think, Southern Sports Mondays, because I know when we're talking about a race coming up in Sonoma in NASCAR. They just raced in Missouri. Those are technically not Southern places. All Elite Wrestling is based in Jacksonville. Florida's kind of the South. I don't know if Florida's the South. It's geographically South. I'm not sure culturally. Yeah, kind of so. But the sports that I grew up with, wrestling and NASCAR, racing in general. Let's talk some AEW. AEW's got a lot going on these days. The recent pay-per-view All Outs, new world champion crowned CM Punk, and then a few days after winning the belt, CM Punk injures himself. He's apparently going to need some minor surgery, and as a result, is going to need to be out of action for at least a few weeks. And only because, and I think this is the case, only because AEW has, in a rare bit of activity for that company, which tries to spread out its pay-per-views every 3 months or so, 4 pay-per-views mainly a year. And so normally right after a pay-per-view, if CM Punk needed to be out for 2 or 3 weeks, and which may end up being the case with this minor surgery he needs, you could just work around it. You could have the next challenger, the next number one contender sort of emerge, and then, kind of work an angle where they talk for a bit each week and kind of build up the heat, slowly. That's what I love about AEW with the more spread out big events, is that you don't have to constantly go from one show to the next and, find a new contender, find a new, angle and that kind of thing. But because of the fact that the AEW New Japan Super Show is coming up literally just like 3 weeks from when we're recording this podcast, and CM Punk had already been announced to of course defend the AEW World Title against Hiroshi Tanahashi of New Japan Wrestling. That does put, and because this is a Super Show, I mean that puts the pressure on Tony Khan and AEW to come up with some strategy. I mean, and the long build, what a 9-month build to getting CM Punk into contention for a title, then winning the world title from Hangman Adam Page in a really good match at All Out. You don't want to just take the belt off of him, and so Tony is using a solution that he used when Cody Rhodes needed to miss just a couple weeks of shows back in December, early January, and he was a TNT champion. About crowning an interim TNT champion and then having the belts merge at a show when Cody was able to come back from that COVID break. They're going to use that same approach, and it's actually something that boxing has used. Certainly, UFC popularized the idea of an interim champion. What happens is you crown what interim champion basically is your number one contender, but they have a belt, and then eventually, when the regular champion is able to come back and defend, you have those two compete, and then the winner is the champ. And that's just how things would work anyway. But you're formalizing it by calling this person the interim champion. And for, the purposes of AEW here, whoever this interim champion ends up being, whether it's 2 or 3 weeks or 6, 8 weeks, whatever it ends up being that CM Punk is out, you've got someone else in place to sort of carry the mantle. I mean, when you're world, if it's one thing when it's your TNT champ or your world tag team champs or something of that nature, but when it's your world champ, that's the signal caller for your whole promotion. And so you don't want that person not and that belt not being defended on your shows. And so that's a long way of me saying this week on TBS on the Dynamite show on Wednesday, because it's the upcoming Super Show, AEW New Japan, AEW's side will crown its top contender. Jon Moxley was the listed number one contender for CM Punk on the AEW ranking side. He is sitting pretty. He will be in the main event of Dynamite. There will be a battle royal that will determine who will face Moxley in the main event of Dynamite. For the winner of that then would go up against the winner of Hiroshi Goto versus Hiroshi Tanahashi. which will be on New Japan's Dominion card later this week, actually Sunday. And the winners of those two matches will then face off at the AEW New Japan Super Show June 26th to determine the interim champion, who will then eventually face CM Punk, and they will. I mean, theoretically, they would then unify the interim belt with the regular belt. Though, I mean, interim championship can be defended in between, and so there could be a change of that champion. Even though I would doubt that would want to be that Tony Khan would want that to be the case. Couple of bits of news and notes related to who can contend. We mentioned John on the AEW side, at least. John Moxley already is locked into that number one contender spot. He will face the winner of the Battle Royal. Bryan Danielson will not be able to participate in the Battle Royal. At least that's the report today. Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer newsletter indicating that Danielson is out for a week or two with an undisclosed injury that prevented him from participating in a meet and greet this past weekend. He was not able to fly to New Hampshire for a scheduled meet and greet. And so Danielson won't be available. Adam Page apparently also not available. Apparently his return is set for that June 26th Super Show. He's been given some time off after his long run as the AEW World Champion. And so those are two guys, I mean, a former champion, a former WWE champion, who you would love to have in the mix for being a part of this whole scene, who will not be able to be there. The question will be, can Chris Jericho, not the first AEW World Champion, will he be a part of this? It doesn't look like Kenny Omega's back anytime soon either from his various issues. He had a couple of surgeries. He was dealing with vertigo. His run as AEW champion ended last November. He has not wrestled since, so it's been quite a while off for Kenny Omega. But you've got then that would be three of your former champions who are not available to be a part of this whole process, and that's not good news for Tony Khan. But I think otherwise, I think this is working out. It's going to work out as well as it could, considering that, ideally you'd like to just have your new champion CM Punk main eventing your next pay-per-view, which is, scheduled rarely, but it is the case a month after the big All Out main event win. In the end, I think you're probably going to see, based on the way things seem to be going with just kind of reading some tea leaves here, it looks like John Moxley is going to end up at the end of this process being your new AEW interim world champ. He's a former world champ, of course, as well. Boy, you can't go wrong, I don't think, down the road having Moxley face off with CM Punk. I mean, certainly having Moxley Tanahashi is likely going to be the main event. It would seem to me that those are going to be the two winners on the two sides of the Super Show. That's a pretty good main event. And so that's the way things will probably go there. Another guy who won't be a part of this process, almost certainly, and when I say almost certainly, 99.999% certainly, MJF, Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Interesting angle working with Max. You're obviously pretty well aware, if you're listening to this part of the podcast, you're interested in AEW. Friedman, MJF, had one of those pipe bomb type situations last week on Dynamite with his promo cut aiming at the backstage. Tony Khan, Friedman has been making it known for months that he's upset with his pay relative to other performers in AEW. Maybe his booking. I don't know that he can really complain about booking. He's been he won 3 out of 4 in a top level feud with Chris Jericho. He's 1-1 career against CM Punk. And the one loss was with some chicanery. So not even necessarily a clean loss to Punk at the end of their, at least the stoppage of their recent feud. Punk got the win and then went on to a world title match. MJF had to satisfy the blow off of a 2-year plus angle with Wardlow, and in the process put Wardlow over bigger than anybody else in the company, other than probably MJF and CM Punk, and maybe even approaching, not making that a maybe with those two guys. So MJF is a kingmaker in his own right, and he's certainly a future world champion in AEW. But these hints that have been dropped on podcasts and maybe some Twitter and other social media over the last several months, played off in the ring, given a live mic on Wednesday's Dynamite in front of the Discovery Turner executives out in LA. MJF delivered a all-time classic promo that shot at everything, at least a work shoot at everything, going over all these details, going over his displeasure about how he wants to go to WWE when his contract's up January 1st of 2024. To me, I mean, I've shared in a column over the weekend. I don't know that we need to parse too many details about whether this is a work or a shoot using the wrestling terminology. It's clearly a work, but don't even worry about that. Just, a lot of fans want to say, okay, well, okay, if this is a work, then where's it going? And why are they doing this, etc. It's got people talking, and that's what wrestling. It's the sizzle. Wrestling matches by and large are the same thing over and over. Pro wrestling matches, I mean, amateur wrestling matches, they're the same thing over and over. What gets us to keep coming back is that we invest in the people, the athletes, the performers, and we have our favorites, and then we see where it goes. And MJF is definitely getting attention here, and in a good way. He's to me, he's an underrated in-ring performer, but he is one of the all-time greats at selling what he's getting ready to do, or what he's already done, or both. And I think that's so I say, just sit back and let's just see where it goes. I mean, I've got a lot of ideas. You do, people all over social media have lots of ideas as to where this story can go, where it will go. It's fine to share those, but in the end, I think it'd be more fun if we just kind of see where it goes, and stop trying to rewrite it for the people who are doing it. And I say that with the experience of, it's limited compared to what a lot of other folks have who've worked in the business, but I have worked in the business, and I was actually part of a company that was, now All Elite Wrestling's AEW. I was part of a company called Awesome Wrestling Entertainment, AWE, back more than a decade ago, that thought it could be, just like a number of companies have popped up and unfortunately in a lot of cases obviously dropped off the map, that thought it could be a secondary company in the U.S. wrestling marketplace to WWE. Obviously, WWE, the hegemon in pro wrestling in the United States. But AWE, the goal was, hey, let's just see if we can be a company that can get on TV. And there was some backing from some folks in California who not only had money but connections, and there was talk of a TV show. There was a live pay-per-view, and not one of these internet pay-per-views. It was on cable systems across the country, across North America, and Canada, and that kind of thing. And I was part of that creative team, and it was a great experience, a fun experience. And we thought at the time that we were going to be working in pro wrestling for a while, and things didn't work out, but we built a similar reality-based storyline around our main event. And I wrote a column on the Augusta Free Press website. Please check it out, just to give you some insight into how stories like that are built. And, we had a lot of people speculating with us as to where things should go. And that's kind of where I get that feeling again is, as someone who has created a fun angle and worked with some big names in the business to get you to believe something, just enjoy it. We had a lot of fun creating it, and it didn't quite lead where we wanted it to lead, but I tell you what, the people who were involved put a lot of thought and effort into it already, and the idea that maybe it's done the way you want it done, or that kind of thing. In the end, just enjoy it. It's entertainment, and it's there for that reason. So I've praised Tony Khan for making chicken salad out of chicken something else with the CM Punk injury, and what he's done to create a world title, interim world title tournament that can get things moving in a direction, and actually maybe even get us through a good summer here without CM Punk. Unfortunately, I'm going to give some criticism now, some pretty harsh criticism, for another injury. And this was an in-ring injury during the all-out Double or Nothing pay-per-view. I called it All Out earlier. I'll correct myself there. Stat boy, I'm correct. Corrections and factual errors. Yeah, it's not. It was Double or Nothing. Sorry for that. But Jeff Hardy suffered an injury early in the match, sort of a dream match. The Hardys against the Young Bucks. I say sort of a dream match. It was a dream match. Not exactly sure where the injury happened. It just looked like at first. Now, watching it live, I will say I knew you could tell something was wrong at the viewing party we had here. I was telling everybody, look, maybe he tore his ACL. Hardy tagged out to his brother Matt, and then laid in a heap in the ring, and he was clearly not right, but I thought he was dragging his leg, and so it made me think maybe a knee injury, maybe a torn ACL. Turns out it was concussion, and whatever it would have been. A ringside doctor came up and checked with him, and that he further confirmed to me that something was wrong. And Jeff, after the doctor walked away, Jeff still laid there in the ring. I mean, it was very noticeable, very odd that he didn't try to get up and climb out and stand at ringside or even just roll out of the ring. He just laid there in the ring, and eventually, boy, they finished the match, and it wasn't quick either. Like in normal situations where there's an injury, however severe it might be, an audible is called, and direction is usually sent from the back. And there's people that's what is called gorilla position. That's the command position behind the scenes of the show. Tony Khan is there. I was there with Tully Blanchard was our gorilla guy at the AWE pay-per-view in 2011, the only pay-per-view we did. But Marvin Ward and myself were right there with him. We were the creative team that wrote the show, and it was just Tully running things for us, basically getting the wrestlers to listen. That's the important part of that job. And so, you basically, the folks at Gorilla, in the case of AEW, they certainly have the ability to talk to the referee in an earpiece in his ear. You see all the time that there's an earpiece in the referee's ear. They're able to say, what they need to do. And the doctor, having checked on Jeff Hardy, had to know that there was something wrong. He did know that there was something wrong. And then that could have been communicated, should have been communicated back to the folks in the back, and then the folks in the back should have communicated up to the referee, and then thus to the wrestlers, that we need to take this home. And instead, they went through basically the match with Matt Hardy, and this didn't really come to light until Matt Hardy on his podcast a few days later admitted that Jeff Hardy didn't remember anything from the match. He was knocked loopy, he said. And I think that's a quote, knocked loopy. And the hard part of that then is that, I mean, not only did Jeff continue the match, he did an off the top rope dive onto one of the Young Bucks in the ring. And then he did an off the top rope dive to the floor with, I think it was Matt Jackson, who was laying prone on a ringside step, and did a swanton dive onto the performer, and with that has no give, unlike the ring. It was reminiscent of a move I think he did a couple weeks ago in a match on Rampage with Darby Allin. And no give. Guy's already got his a concussion basically means your brain has been it has hit itself inside your skull, and it's got some damage there. I mean, it's got some at least short-term damage there. So now you've got a guy jumping off the top rope, landing on the mat. That's going to kind of swish things around. And then even more so, jumping from the top rope onto a guy laying on a set of ringside steps. There were a couple of super kick spots in the ring involving both Jeff and Matt Hardy taking super kicks from the Young Bucks. And so I'm not blaming the Young Bucks, and I'm not blaming Jeff. Jeff was just a vessel. Even his brother said so. Matt said he was just a vessel. He was just there. Matt should have been looking out. Maybe I should put some blame on the Young Bucks too. They should have been looking out. They all had to know that something was wrong with Jeff Hardy, and certainly Tony Khan. If me sitting at home can see that something's wrong, and I'm thinking knee, but they know it's not knee. They know it's something else. the Hardys ended up winning the match, and that was where things were going to go. That's the booking was the Hardys going to win, get the big win, and kind of move on. You could have done any of a number of things. You could have had Matt simply get a roll-up pin, and that would be unsatisfying. But you could have also done something where the Young Bucks, okay, hey, here's the audible. Let's have the Young Bucks get disqualified. A few weeks from now, when Jeff's 100% healthy, we'll do a rematch, and then the Hardys get the win in the rematch. But we've got heat in between. We've got the Young Bucks having done something dastardly. They're the heels. They've done something dastardly to get disqualified, and as a result, the Hardys going to have to chase them for a few weeks and get their revenge. That could have been come up with on the fly. Instead, they let a man with a concussion wrestle and take at least 2 really hard bumps, a couple of super kicks that could have further damaged him. I mean, and you could even say, well, super kicks, yeah, they're trained to, the person delivering the super kick is trained to make it look good, make it sound good, but they're not really, getting flush on the face. Well, a guy who's concussed could easily inadvertently lean into it more and take a really bad blow because he's not there. He's not fully cognizant at all. He's not cognizant at all of his surroundings, and that could have been dangerous. Either of those 2 top rope dives could have been disastrous. Either short term, on live TV, a guy, having some sort of issue, or certainly long term. So, that could have been, should have been handled a lot better than it was, and it's an indictment on AEW's approach that they didn't do a better. Hopefully, they'll learn from this and do a better job in the future. So, Dynamite coming up Wednesday night should be fun. World title eliminators, basically battle royal at the start, a number 1 contenders match at the end, and some stuff in between. So our thanks to Rod Mullins for talking NASCAR with us. Thanks to you for listening. I really appreciate your time and putting in listening time with us here. I mentioned this earlier. I'll reinforce it here late. Tweet me at notChrisGraham1. You can email me at AugustaFreePress2@gmail.com. Let me know what you want us to talk about here on these podcasts. We talk about wrestling. We'll talk about NASCAR. We talk UVA sports. We talk Nats baseball. We'll talk some Virginia politics, culture, mental health. There's lots of things we talk about on our podcast. If there's a particular topic within those that you want us to address, if there's something else you'd like us to address, please just let us know through those means. Thank you for your time, for your energy, your attention. Really appreciate it. Everyone have a great day.